Like Douaumont and the other forts in this network around Verdun, Fort Vaux had a big dry moat around the outside. And it actually had galleries, machine gun emplacements, on the inside of that moat, so that if enemy troops, Germans naturally, got into the moat, they were still going to take machine gun fire. They weren't protected from the fort. Here are a couple French 75, 1897 pattern 75mm gun emplacements. You can see the steel doors on the outside. Those guns are on swiveling emplacements on the inside. It can be turned to and fro. Now let's go up on top. So this doesn't look like a whole lot from up here, because these forts were dug into the ground and then covered with earth. The earth on top made for a really good protection against shell fire. The walls are several meters thick of concrete and then covered by dirt on top of that. Not everything was underground though. We have observation and machine gun firing ports like this one. Down here, we have a more substantial gun turret. Now there was one large primary gun emplacement here at Vaux, and it was destroyed very early in the battle. Long story, there had actually been a tentative plan to demolish this fort and abandon it. For a while, the French thought that, having learned the lessons from the occupation of Belgium, forts like this simply weren't sustainable in modern warfare, and their plan was to blow it up, so at least the Germans couldn't use it as a strong point themselves, and then evacuate. However, they ended up manning the place anyway during the Battle of Verdun, and when that happened, you can see there's a little gun port inside there. At any rate, initially, when they were thinking they were going to blow this place up and evacuate it, they set demolition charges, and then someone forgot to take the demolition charges out of the main gun turret, and it was hit by a German 420mm shell, which is no small piece of work to begin with. That's probably a piece of the turret itself. That German shell actually, not only did it of course detonate on impact, it also detonated the demolition charges that were still unfortunately in place, and that took that main gun turret thoroughly out of service. However, the rest of the fort remained intact, with a number of 75mm gun emplacements and machine guns. Now, the Battle of Verdun began in late February of 1917. Here's another piece of that main gun cupola, or turret. That's just an amazing amount of steel right here. Let me put this in perspective. There's my hand. This thing is, in places, over a foot thick. And of course the top of this fort was originally nice and smooth and well contoured, and was cratered to a moonscape by 6 months of battle here. Like I was saying, the battle began in late February of 1917. The fort at Douaumont was captured there almost immediately. That's a story for a separate video. And then the fort here at Vaux would be a linchpin of the French lines until June. And in June, the Germans got close enough to actually threaten the fort. So let's go back down and let's actually go inside. Fort Vaux was the site of a tremendous firefight in June of 1917. This was one of the French forts that anchored the French line at Verdun, and it was not until June that it was actually taken. On June 2nd, the Germans cut off the fort and isolated it. And from there, 6 days of protracted combat would continue until the garrison eventually had to surrender. So for the first couple days, they were able to man the outer defenses of the fort. But by the last few days, the Germans were actually able to force entry into the fort, and hand-to-hand, basically, combat continued inside the fort here. So these fortifications, these walls, built inside the fort's galleries, these were not original. These were thrown up hastily by the French garrison as an emergency measure. And believe it or not, combat was going on in here with hand grenades, with machine guns, eventually with flamethrowers. This was absolutely a hellacious firefight. You can see large chunks taken out of the walls in some places. We have another set of emergency barricades here. And this hole on top is a grenade hole. So it's sloped. You can throw grenades down there, but people can't come back up through it. You see gunfire pitting the walls here. Here's some of the original outside positions. And here's a kind of nerve-wracking sort of thing. The ceilings of these tunnels are smooth and well finished, with a few exceptions in places like this. I don't know that the camera gives it a really good perspective, but this is a place where the ceiling has caved in as the result of artillery fire up on top of the fort. It didn't actually break through the roof, but it caused basically concrete spalling on the inside. And so we have these big sections where the roof is blown out here inside. That gives you a little bit of perspective there. The electrical wiring, of course, has been added, as this is obviously a museum now. But looking at this wall from this side, you can see we have a rifle or machine gun firing port here. We have a grenade hole here. And then we have another gun firing port down at the bottom. Fort Vaux, in addition to these upper galleries, also had a whole network of lower galleries as well. Here's another section where the roof has been blown in by artillery fire from the outside. The troops here ultimately lasted until June the 7th of 1917. At that point, they were completely out of water. You can see that there's water on the floor here. There's a lot of condensation inside. And troops were licking the walls, literally drinking urine, because they were completely out of water. And the commander of the garrison surrendered on the 7th of June. His surrender was actually personally taken by the Crown Prince Wilhelm, and he was treated with a significant amount of honor by the Germans for the incredibly tenacious fight that they put up here in Fort Vaux. If you are ever in the Verdun area in France, I would strongly encourage you to visit both Fort Vaux and Fort Douaumont. The museums here are absolutely worth your time. These are incredible sites. And for my part, I'd like to thank MHT, Military History Tours, for making it possible for me to come here. Thanks for watching.